Good morning, students. Welcome to yet another episode of Interview with CEO. So, today's CEO is Mr. Hindol Basu. Mr. Hindol Basu is the CEO of Actify Data Labs, a machine learning and AI company. Actify Data Labs is a data platform and machine learning company that helps organizations leverage the power of data using its data platform, Adaptify, and its dedicated digital lab. Hindol brings in about 19 years of analytics consulting experience spanning across multiple industry verticals and markets. He had led multiple analytics initiatives in the Indian, Asia Pacific, and North American market across a wide variety of industries, including financial services, manufacturing, and retail. He has pioneered the development of innovative solution frameworks in IoT, leveraging macroeconomic data for risk estimation and building gray box machine learning frameworks. In India, he has been the pioneer in establishing credit bureau analytics for the Indian market. He had developed the first set of credit bureau scores for CIBIL, Indian Credit Market Credit Bureau. He was nominated as the top 10 data scientist in India in 2015 by the Analytics India magazine. Hindol is very passionate about teaching analytics and data science to young students and young and professional managers. He has created learning modules to bridge the complex mathematical world of data science and the real world business challenges faced by operating managers. Hindel holds a bachelor degree in engineering from IIT Kharagpur and an MBA from IIM Bangalore. He is also the co-author of the book titled Business Analytics: Applications of Consumer Marketing, which he co-authored with Sandhya Kuruganti, which is again published by McGraw-Hill in India. He is an avid contributor to a number of analytics and machine learning publications. Hindol sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your kind words.
So again, for us, this is, I mean, you are somebody like a living legend. So I am sure my students are going to be very keen to hear what you have to what your thoughts are on the questions that I'm going to ask, sir. So the first question that I have for you is that, so I mean, your body of work is so impactful, right? So what work ethics are important for a student to succeed in a career?
Um, that's a very loaded question,
Yeah.
and I will try to answer it to the best of my abilities.
Yes,
Of
sir.
course, there isn't one correct answer to any of these questions.
Yes.
Uh, but the first thing that I think about when I think about work ethics, and when I also think about the days when I just transitioned to a professional life from my student life,
Yeah.
what I realize, possibly the first and most important thing for us to remember is that how do we move beyond I, me, myself? I mean, it may sound a little philosophical, but most of the times, students, particularly in this generation of instant gratification, we think about what the organization is going to give me, what will be my pay package, what will be my designation, etc. But a good work ethics, which really will help you succeed in life, really means about what I can give to the organization. Because if I am giving more to the organization, then naturally the organization will give things back to me. I don't even have to ask for it. So, focusing on what am I giving to the organization, that's possibly is the first and most important thing. Let's not always think about what I am getting, but what I am giving. Because if I give, I will inevitably get back because the organization will want to retain and grow people who are contributing to its success. I mean, we don't even have to think about how much increment I will get in my next appraisal. That is already taken care of if I have given more to the organization. So it's important for us to think what I can give rather than what I can get. That's, I guess, the first and most important thing. The second is, of course, hard work. And there is no substitute to hard work. And if you even read about very smart people, you will see that they have all been very hard workers. You have to work hard. there is no alternative to hard work. You may be the most intelligent, the most smart, the most brilliant person, but still there is no alternative. And that is across any industry, any role, any geography. There is no alternative to hard work. The third is your willingness to learn, particularly when a student who is getting into the professional life, or it doesn't matter if it's for the first time, even when you have 20, 25 years of experience, even after that, your willingness to learn. And one should have an approach that I want to learn everything. Say you are working in the marketing function. It doesn't matter that you have to learn marketing. You have an attitude that you have to learn what finance is doing, what technology is doing, what operations is doing. Have this insatiable hunger to learn and learn everything. I mean, one should almost have an attitude that I will learn everything that everyone does in this organization so that I can, figuratively speaking, not really speaking, replace everyone in the company. I can be the finance guy, I can be the marketing guy, I can be the ops guy, I can be anyone. I will learn. The next one, which I think is important, is uh, to understand how my work that I do impacts the P&L of the organization. Whatever I do, how does that impact revenue? How does that impact cost? Understanding this transmission or this connection between what I come and do through the entire day, how does that impact the revenue and the cost of the organization? It's extremely important because then I can also understand how much or what I am giving to the organization. And it also adds a sort of sense of purpose. You don't come to office to write a piece of code. You don't come to office to create a piece of marketing communication. You come to office to write a piece of code that will help reduce turnaround time for logistics, which will help reduce costs, which will help reduce the margin of the company by 0.0001%. So understanding the transmission is very important. Then the last thing I wanted to mention is humility and letting go of your ego. You know, it's very important for us to be humble. Uh, some of you may be very brilliant, you may be having very stellar expertise in certain areas, but none of that should make one arrogant, because that's something which can kill your professional growth like nothing else. You can be the hardest worker, you can be the most intelligent person, but if you're not humble, then you will never be able to work with others. You will never be able to work in a team. You will never be respected. So I think it's very important. Whatever skill you bring in, never lose your humility. And do not have a very big ego when you are at work. I mean, a big ego is a huge deterrent for you to learn, because sometimes when you are 10 years experience, there may be a fresher who has come, who has found something, and and you can learn from him or her. So letting go of your ego and always being humble is very, very, very important, irrespective of wherever you are rich. You can become the CEO of Citibank, you can become the CEO of Microsoft one day, but please never lose your humility. That's about it.
Makes sense, sir. Makes sense. I think that's very crisp, actually. Sir, the next question I have is that you have led large scale initiatives, right? What does it take for a person to lead large scale initiatives? One thing could be humility, what you mentioned. What else is required? Let's say if you're launching a large scale, product like your own product, Adaptify, which is used by many. So, what does it take to launch and lead teams that launch these large scale initiatives?
Um, well, as I sort of think back, one important aspect of launching a large scale initiative, be it a product, a project, or even starting your own organization or starting a big division in organization, whatever it is, whenever you are having a large scale initiative, it's very important to have both the macro and the micro view at the same time always in your head, because it's important that you always know the big picture, but in the quest of always understanding and keeping in mind the big picture, if you do not pay attention to the details, to the smaller aspects, then you will develop loopholes and lacunae in what you are building. I mean, I almost use a phrase which is, when you are leading a large scale initiative, you should have a telescope in one eye and a microscope in another eye. So, which means that whenever you are looking at the big picture, how what is the longer term impact, how you will design the initiative, you should never lose sight of the finer details, because that will make you blind towards the smaller problems, and that will make you make mistakes which will finally impact your big outcome that you are trying to achieve. The next point which is important is, again, finally, it's people that you will have to have who are working together, because finally it's all to do with people working together in whichever large initiatives you are trying to undertake, because you can't do it alone, you will have people. Now, when you have a large team for a large initiative, it's very important to have what I call is an optimal hands off. What an optimal hands off means is, some people may need more hand holding, some people may need just a strategic direction, and then they will move on your own. So one has to understand what is the right hands off requirement of each of the key members in the team, and you have to have all that optimal hands off strategy. Okay. If you look at the financials of any large scale initiative, one should always remember that whenever you are looking at a large scale initiative, the cost always comes first. You will incur the cost right away. The benefits will come later once the initiative is completed. So it's very important to have a strong focus on cost management. If you do not have a focus on cost management, you may end up in a situation where the final cost benefit equation of the initiative does not make sense. The other important aspect, which is very similar to cost, is risk. Now, whenever you are handling a large scale initiatives, there are various types of risks, and they are more for longer term initiatives because the timeline of execution is longer. So new risks may pop up at different points in time and from different sources. So it's very important that you have a risk management plan. You plan for the risks, plan for contingency, think about if this risk finally happens, how you are going to deal with that. So have a risk management plan. Now, these are all the things that you must have. But that being said, many of the times you may not have all the answers at the start of the initiative. If you have to think about all the risks, how will this initiative finally pan out? Will it finally yield the result that you are looking for? There are too many questions and too many concerns. And frankly speaking, you may not have the answer to all the questions on day one. And sometimes that creates a fear in our mind that sometimes almost paralyzes us out of fear into inaction. So don't be afraid. You will never have all the answers. You will have to figure some answers as you go along. So don't wait for having all the answers at the start of the initiative. And therefore, you have to be agile and you have to learn as you go along. Say you halfway or quarter way into the initiative, you see something evolving and you may have to make changes. You have to learn from whatever has happened and you have to make changes. Last but not the least, we are all humans and we all make mistakes. Particularly when you grow senior and you become CXOs, etc., etc., in an organization, your ego sometimes comes in your way of admitting that you made a mistake. If you think and if you realize in your heart that you have already made a mistake, admit it to yourself, admit it to your team, correct it. Do not try to make a mistake work all the time. Sometimes it may be a right thing, you may want to make it work, but sometimes you may want to make it work just to prove yourself right. You know that you have made a mistake. It's better if you admit it and you get rid of something. But sometimes our ego comes in between and says that, well, I, who is the VP of engineering, has made a decision, and I can't say that I made a wrong decision at the start because of my ego of the VP of engineering. So don't let your ego come in between for you to admit mistakes. That's some of the thoughts that I had.
Thank you, sir. That humility is always, again, ego and humility are, go hand in hand. So the humble you are, the better it is for you, actually.
All the time, all the time.
Hmm. Sir, the next question I have is, you said about risk management, right? So is there any framework that you use, or how do you identify these risks?
Of course, framework that you use depends on the context and the industry. Uh,
Yep.
I mean, one challenge in management is always that things are very context specific.
Yes.
So the risks and the approach to risk management is very context specific. But one thing is that there are areas from which risk may come out. For example, there can be macroeconomic risks. For example, something happening in the macroeconomy, like GDP going down significantly, etc., some industry facing some problem. There can be macroeconomic risks, risks which are economy wide, or maybe even worldwide, like what we are facing now in COVID. So there can be a macro risk. Then there can be industry specific risks, which is sometimes something is happening to which can impact your industry. There's an industry specific risk. And then there are regional specific risks, company specific risks, and function specific risks. So it's important that you know that all these aspects that you have to look at to see where risk can come in. Now, what are the risks for each from each of the sources? That depends a lot on the industry, but one has to remember that these are the aspects that which risk can come from. Second thing in risk management is to understand what is going to be the impact and the probability of the risk, and this is very well understood, used very frequently. What is the impact if this risk happens, and what is the probability that this risk will happen, and therefore what will be your mitigation plan? So usually people use that kind of a framework, but it's important to think about risk from all these sources while drafting your risk management plan.
Okay, sir. I think that makes sense. Sir, the next question I have is that, few of my students who are engineers, how do they get access to macroeconomic data, and how do they keep in touch with what is happening in their target industry, the target industry in which they would like to start their career?
Oh, uh, so again, it irrespective of your basic discipline that you come from, you may come from engineering, someone may come from business education, someone may be a chartered accountant. Irrespective of that, if you look at how to track the industry and how to understand the industry, again, the first thing to understand is how does your business make money? And when you understand that, how your business makes money, you figure out how each of these levers of making money and these avenues of cost that you would incur are impacted globally. For example, Are they impacted by some disruptions in technology? Are they impacted by input material costs? Are they impacted by new competition coming or a sector being opened up by the economy? So it's important when you look at macro to start from the micro. Start usually, and I mean, I follow this approach. And again, there is no correct way of doing it. If you are looking at one particular industry, that industry, how does it make money and what are the costs in that industry? So this is the way. Say let's take FMCG industry. FMCG makes money by selling products, and its costs are distribution cost, commission to retailers, etc., etc. So if you see, if it is making money by selling products, it makes money by selling product in urban areas and in rural areas. So what is it internationally and domestically, and in the domestic market, that is going to impact each one of these drivers, and then correlate what you should look at. For example, do you want to look at something like distribution apps? Do you want to look at some things like logistics costs, how logistics supply chains are changing, so how advertising is changing? So if you understand how you are making money, then you understand how each one of these drivers are impacted by various things in the industry. And to know it, some of it you will get data from various external sources, like you will get various external indicators, you will get amount of technology spend, you will get the balance sheet financials of your competitors, balance sheet financials of your leaders in other markets. For example, you want to see what P&G's financials in the US are looking like. You will get all this data. More than the data, it's important how you look at the data. So there's no dearth of data. You can figure out most of this data somewhere. But you have to find out what you are looking for. And what you are looking for will come from your analysis of how you make money and how you incur costs.
Hmm. That makes sense. That makes sense. I'm sure our students will benefit from this answer. Sir, again, what according to you is business acumen? Is it like you mentioned, the understanding of how your company makes money, and who are all the players, what are the costs, and what are the levers for revenue? Is that how you would discuss? I mean, describe business acumen?
That's one part of it. That's, of course, one part of it. The other part of it is how you trade off between short term and long term. Because business acumen also means, along with short term margin profitability, how do you build the business in the long run? So, how do you look at building the business in the long run? And sometimes it may even involve a trade off between the short term and the long term. So, how do you, for example, invest in something? For example, again, if you take an FMCG company, you may not have any distribution in the Northeast today, northeastern part of the country, because that's not a huge consumer. But
Okay.
given some indicators, do you want to build a distribution chain in Northeast proactively? So that is also part of business acumen, how you build the business for the long run. And the last part of business acumen again is, remember again, finally it's all to do with people. What drives people? Now, here when we say people, possibly you can call it stakeholders. What drives stakeholders? Now, of course, there are employees, but there are customers, there are suppliers, there are others in the community whom you are impacting. Now, what is the motivation of those individuals with respect to your company? For example, why does someone buy your product? It can be various needs, it can be a direct need, it can be an indirect need, whatever. For example, why does someone buy your product? Why will a supplier stick to you for the long run? Because you give long run business, or you give slightly better price than the competitor? What do you promise to your suppliers, though, so that he or she sticks to you for the long run? So we have to also understand what motivates people or stakeholders who are connected to us. So if I just kind of summarize, I would put these three. So one is understanding the P&L and L and how it gets impacted. Two, understanding the long term view of building a business. Three, understanding what motivates stakeholders. And if you sort of want to summarize all of this and put it in one sentence, it's like as if it is your business. For example, if some of you are from the business family and your father, grandfather has been running a business, they never went to a business school to learn business. They did almost 99% of the things that we read in business school because they thought it is their business. So, owning the business, which again goes back to saying, what am I giving to the organization? As if it is my business. I'm not an employee, it is my business. That makes all the difference. If you think like that, then naturally the three things will come to you.
Hmm. Accountability. Yep.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Makes
that's the right
sense.
word.
Makes sense. Sir, another question I had is about COVID. I know there's a lot of discussion happening in the industry. Um, so, how is COVID impacting your industry? So, again, to track back, how would you define your company? Which industry does it operate? Is it in machine learning, or is it in AI, or is it a data science company?
So, these definitions are a lot overlapping.
Okay.
Machine learning, data science, AI, they are because there are a lot of jargons which float around in the internet. Finally, they are all
Yep.
very related and they are a part of technology. And if you
Yep.
just want to define it, it's a part of technology which
Okay.
uses data to
Yep.
build solutions, build and
Yes.
implement solutions.
Yes,
That's
sir.
pretty much the heart or essence of these type of companies.
Terminology.
So we
Yes.
are one of those. We are one of
Yep.
those.
Okay.
Now, coming to think how COVID is impacting us, of course, COVID is impacting us quite severely. And the reason COVID is impacting us very seriously is because if you see, half of our business is where we are really part of the heart of the organization, where we are really helping them make money, helping them save costs. There isn't too much of a problem there. I mean, there is a problem still, but the problem is lesser. On the other part, because we are in areas which are not very old, there is a little bit of experimentation that companies have to do to understand if this is of value or not. Little bit of test driving of cars, if you may say so. And today, most organizations do not have either the budget or the mental bandwidth to invest in any sort of new experimentation kind of initiatives. So that is what has been very, very severely impacted. On the first part, where we are still in the heart of the organization, helping them make more money, helping them save costs, what has happened is because of COVID, everyone's revenue is getting impacted. For example, Starbucks is one of our customers. And obviously, Starbucks revenue has become completely zero. And when that happens, then everyone who is connected in the chain gets hit. So we are also a part of that chain. And we will, of course, be hit. So, but the good thing is, all of these organizations realize that we are an important part of the chain. So, what they're saying is, when good times come, it will be business as usual. But till good time comes, this is going to hit everyone in the chain. And we are in the chain and we are also getting hit. So, this is the
Hmm.
two ways in which COVID is impacting us.
Mhm. Okay. So, I mean, again, you are if you ask me, you are somebody whom I really look up to. So, can I ask this question that when do you think this impact of COVID would subside? I know that COVID is not the last pandemic that we'll be hit with. There will be pandemics coming, I'm sure. But when do you foresee, from the data that you're seeing, when do you see that it will subside and business will become, everything will become business as usual?
That's a very difficult question. And we are
I
all
know. I know.
trying to find an answer to
I
that.
know. I know. I know.
So,
I know.
So see, one is when the I mean, when the top of the iceberg will get removed, like when the infection intensity will stop and these lockdowns will slowly get erased and we will slowly get back to office, etc. That is one part of it. And most people are saying maybe next 3 months, 6 months, that will between 3 to 6 months. Most people are saying, and this is, and because none of us have seen this in our lifetime, so people are guessing that in the next maybe 6 months things will start looking normal. But the bigger problem is that, see, most industries will lose almost 4 to 6 months of business, and there will be a huge time that will be required for industries to recover, because so many people are will lose jobs, so many people will sort of migrate out of where they are working today. What that means is demand will take a lot of time to come back to normal. And in every market, I mean, US is seeing the biggest unemployment claims which has been registered still till, I mean, from 1930 or sometime till the time of from the time of the Great Depression. They have not seen so many unemployment claims in the history. So for these, till these people get back to jobs, who will buy products and services? And if people do not buy, how will companies recover? So that recovery is going to be, I mean, that's a thing which is more worrying, is going to take a long time. It is going to be a
Mm,
long tail of recovery. It's not like a hockey stick that COVID goes
mm,
out,
mm,
everyone goes to office and things become normal.
mm.
This damage that has been done,
Yeah,
uh,
you can
okay,
edit it. Don't
so
worry.
yeah, so this recovery will is going to take a long time, and we do not know how much time it will take. If you see the global financial crisis which had hit the US in 2008 2009, the Lehman crisis, etc., it
Yes, sir.
almost took about 3 to 4 years for demand to come back, and that was
Yeah,
still not as widespread as this. This was not
yeah,
as widespread across geographies.
yeah.
So our fear is that it may take more time.
Hmm. Okay, okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. Sir, you had also developed some courses on data science, right? And some learning modules. So where can
Right.
student find that? Is it available on Coursera or any of those platforms, or is it like in some website?
One is, you could look at my book,
Okay.
which is called Business Analytics Applications to Consumer Marketing,
Yes, sir.
which is a long years of
Yeah.
work that me and
Yeah.
Sandhya. And this
Yeah.
is interesting because Sandhya used to be my first boss. She was
Okay.
my first manager in my life, whom I
Okay.
had worked with. And this is what, human relations are sometimes a lot more important. I mean, she is more like an elder sister to me. I mean, she
Yeah.
comes to my house,
Yeah.
and we have been
Yeah.
working together
Yes.
from the time I
Yes.
started working.
Yes.
So we together have worked on this book, and
Mm-hmm.
this gives you a good idea of a lot of things around data science, and
Yep.
gives a more practitioners or practical view of data science and machine learning, how it is used in various industries. That could be
Okay.
one reference.
Yep.
There are a few here and there, I mean, not in Coursera per se,
Okay.
because that
Yeah.
takes a lot of time to develop a course there.
Yeah.
But there are some YouTube videos, etc., that are there. But the book,
Okay.
I think, is the best place.
Best place to start. So, because the reason why I asked this question was we also have an MBA course here, which is a dual degree course. Okay, so the MBA comes from the Amrita University, and the other degree comes from State University of New York, and they get a
Okay.
MS in analytics, business analytics. Okay, so
Okay.
my question to you is, sir, as a practitioner of data science and business analytics, what are the key tips that you can give to our MBA students so that they become better practitioners of the science?
Um, Well, so there are a few things which you need to be very careful about, particularly when you are, if you are looking at a career in a data-related field, data science, data engineering, machine learning, etc. So first is to understand that data is the heart or the core of everything that we do. Oftentimes, when you talk about machine learning, AI, the focus is more on complex algorithms, neural network, deep learning, etc. But the heart of all of this is data. Therefore, the more varied sources of data and richer data that we can harness, the better are going to be our solutions. So one should always focus more on data. If you can get access to a newer source of data, you can build much better solution compared to you using a very complex methodology compared to a simple methodology. Okay, maybe you are building a simple regression compared to a neural network, but a regression with a richer data may give you better result than than a neural network on a poorer data. That's the first and most important point that we often forget, and we get enamored by most complex maths. The second point is, again, I have mentioned it many, many times here, to understand how the solutions will impact P&L, how they will impact cost and revenue. Because finally, data science, machine learning, all of this works because they help business either save cost or make more money. These are only two things that we can do to help business. So understanding that translation is very important. Third, of course, understanding the maths behind data science and machine learning is extremely important. Now, today, thanks to Google, you can always Google few lines of code in Python and run a neural network model. It's not very difficult. But it's important that you understand what is really happening at the back. what's what's inside. I mean, what is chain rule, how does gradient descent work, how does a neural network really work. Otherwise, you are a superficial professional, and when you go slightly deeper, you will find yourself lacking. The fourth important thing is to understand technology, because if you are not able to code well, if you are not a good programmer, you will not be successful in this area. And increasingly, what is happening is data science and machine learning is getting embedded within other technologies. All of them are coming together, and people are looking at more of what we call our full stack developers who know most aspects of technology. So that's essentially the important points. And to be candid, most of the things that are taught in a slightly quantitative MBA program are, in fact, enough to start a data science career. But we oftentimes do not pay enough attention to all the quantitative courses that are covered in our MBA program. And therefore, we are not as successful. So it's very important for us to understand what professors are teaching in class.
Yes, very true, very true. Because there is an element of tool, and then there is an element of the statistics or mathematics, as you said.
Correct.
Both are, I mean, I would say the mathematical element is more important than the tool, because
Right.
I believe if you have to, tool is just a tool to apply those frameworks, right? So I get it, sir, I get it. I'm sure our students will definitely find this bit of this bit very enlightening. So next question I want to ask you is, again, this came from the MBA world. One of the students asked me, what exactly is strategic planning? So they want to know what happens in a strategic planning meeting. So, and how can a student get better at strategic planning? Have you sat in any strategic planning meeting, sir?
Yeah, quite a few of them. And I had the privilege of, I mean, before starting this, I was part of the Tata group, and I had the privilege of being in a few meetings with some very, very senior executives. I mean, Tata Sons board members and uh, very senior people uh, who have experience across multiple industries. And well, how do I say it? See, the one important thing of strategic planning, someone told me, was your ability to say no. No is possibly the most important word in strategic planning, because if, say, you are a company and you are discussing what all you want to do in the next 3 or 4 years, you can do everything. You can say, I want to start a uh, app where I will do do direct to customer delivery. I want to expand to export market. I want to go to rural markets. I want to do everything. I can do all of this, and all of these are good things. All of these are possibly important things for any organization. Now, what strategy really means is saying no, saying that we will not go to export market, because saying no makes you think about what your organization is all about. You have, if you have to say that no, I will not go to this particular segment. If, say for example, a smartphone maker, I do not want to go to the mass segment. I will remain a premium phone maker. So saying no possibly is the most important aspect of strategic planning that I understood from uh, a lot of senior professionals.
Okay, sir.
Uh, and therefore, you have to say no, you have to understand why your company exists. What is it that you are all about? And therefore, what are the revenue drivers? What are the cost drivers that you need to look at? And all of those go on to help you answer no. So, what are your cost drivers? What are your revenue drivers? What is your objective why you exist? So, all of this come together when you have to say that this are the 10 things I will not do, and this is the one thing that I will do. And when you say I will do this, the next important part is execution. See, good strategy without execution doesn't mean anything. So, how do you tie strategy to execution? If you have a good strategy but you can't execute on it, it doesn't mean anything. So, how you connect strategy to execution? That's the other important part of strategic planning.
Okay, sir. I think it makes sense. So while executing, what are your best practices in coming up with metrics? I mean, when, how do you decide on what metrics to measure?
Um, well, it is quite context specific, but usually, if you look at metrics, you can divide them into a few families, and then you can design metrics based on each one of those families. The first family is a target versus achieved, or target versus actual kind of metric on everything. So when you chart out a strategic plan that this is what I'm going to do, you will put some milestones, some targets along the plan, and how you are achieving those, that is a very important metric. So your plan versus actual, target versus actual, whatever you call that family of metric, that's one family of metric. The next family of metric are, of course, cost metrics, how various costs are trending, how various costs are coming together. And you usually have various cost heads like capital costs, operational cost, people cost, etc., etc., a lot of cost heads. Then you put naturally a lot of revenue head, like revenue per employee, revenue per region, revenue per store, whatever, a lot of revenue metrics. The third we always try to do is a lot of efficiency metrics, how efficient you have been. Now, you may have increased your revenue a lot, but by putting a lot many salespeople. So, what is your efficiency metrics? So, how efficient you have been in uh, delivering that target that you have thought about. So I think most of the times these are the families. Of course, you can never be exhaustive because these are always very context specific. So if I just summarize, so one is a target versus actual kind of metric, cost metrics, revenue metrics, and efficiency metrics. Sometimes, particularly for more customer facing kind of companies, you may want to put some of the customer or brand or perception kind of metrics, how you are
Or
perceived by
satisfaction,
customers,
satisfaction.
satisfaction, nps, net promoter
Yeah,
score, those kind of metrics. So I'll
yeah,
put these, so this I will add this as well. So
yeah,
cost, target versus actual, cost,
yeah.
revenue, efficiency, and customer satisfaction.
Thank you, sir. So I've come to the last question, sir. Are there any books that have inspired you? If so, can you share them?
uh It's frankly speaking, there are many because management is so context specific. I can't really point out to one book that has been uh,
Yep.
very
So it can be more
influential
than
from
one.
a strategic perspective.
Okay.
Um, so well, of course, one thing that I think is very important are case studies,
Okay.
because going through as many different case studies as possible. Like today, a
Yep.
lot of the Harvard case studies, MIT case studies are available online, and you can buy them. Going
Yep.
through case studies, I think, is a much better way than any single one book that can really help. So
Okay.
that is for sure one. See, there are books
Yep.
that I have referred particularly for more for technical ones, like
Okay.
books on econometrics, books on
Yep.
economics and statistics,
Yep.
etc. But from a
Yep.
strategic perspective, I would rather refer lots and lots of case studies rather than
Okay.
any book per se.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So let me reverse the same question. Is there any book that you recently gifted someone?
uh yeah, I did, but those may not be very academic books. uh,
Okay, they were all fiction or
they,
something like that.
they
Okay,
were all,
makes sense.
yeah, so
Makes
I
sense.
can't remember
I
something
know, I know, recommend. I know.
academic that I that I gifted.
No problem. No problem. Sir, another question I had was your business analytics book. Is it available on Amazon, Flipkart?
Yeah, yeah, it's available on
Okay, I'll
Amazon,
Google and
Flipkart, both.
put the link, sir. I'll
Yeah,
put a link in the description of this audio podcast. So thank you so much, Hindol sir. I really appreciate your time, and
thank
we are
you.
so grateful to you for your time. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All the best to everyone. All the best to
Thank you, sir.
everyone. Be safe. Thank you.